welcome back everyone to Woman to Woman, the show where we look to empower and uplift women from all over. And today we're gonna have quite the episode. But before we get into that, I just have to thank our sponsors for our episode today, Frozen Minis and Nail ExQuisite Nail Salon. You can contact Frozen Minis at 821-5264 or follow them on Facebook and Instagram at Frozen Minis 246. And for Nails ExQuisite Nail Salon, you can call them at 247-2483. More about them later in our episode. But now, ladies, let's open up ourselves to another level of conversation. So wherever you are at home, relax, find a comfortable spot, and if you need to, grab some tissues, because we're going to be getting into something that's really close to home, really dear to our hearts. We're going to be talking around the topic, we are resilient to live and to have lost. And as you know, most of us have experienced some form of loss in our lives, and here to share with us about loss are two wonderful women. Up first, we're going to be talking specially to Avril Mears. I'll just give you a little bit about her before we jump right into the meat of the matter. Avril is a wife of 15 years and the mother of two wonderful children, one boy, one girl. Working in the field of health, safety, and environment for over 20 years, she enjoys sharing life with family and friends, and she believes in all things work together for good. I think that's an excellent place for us to begin our discussion, because in our lives, loss is something that we have to pray God will work together for our good. And Avril, we know that you've experienced miscarriage. So let's start it off. Talk to us a little bit about the journey through the first miscarriage. What were your feelings? What were your thoughts? And then even the feelings you had for the miscarriages that followed.
Okay. Let me give a bit of a definition, because that is actually one of the first things I had to deal with in terms of definitions. The medical fraternity considers less than 28 weeks a miscarriage. And so when I went in understanding that I was in labor, because that's a whole nother story. I don't ever know when I'm in labor. I had to fight for that. I cannot remember when how many weeks I was, but I remember what my due date was. And so at the beginning, so you're having a miscarriage. I'm like, I'm not having a miscarriage. That was just instilled in me. And so that process means that whatever happens, happens. Once I continued insisting, they asked me, so when is your due date? I gave my due date, they did the calculation, and immediately things changed.
Wow.
Because my understanding is, as I said, whatever happens, if it's a miscarriage, delay. Once the date now comes to 28 weeks and above, now they would do whatever to save that child. And so after that, it was emergency C-section and so on, off to sleep, less than 10. When I woke up, I had a beautiful baby girl. Obviously 28 weeks, and so she went into the NICU. The neonatal intensive care unit. Went there. I was still kind of weak because I would have had a C-section. My husband, however, he was able to go and to visit her. My mother was also able to go and to visit her. By then we had named her Jordan Elizabeth. Right? And so went through the whole process. She seemed to have been gaining strength because she was able to come off of being given oxygen and started breathing on her own. The day then, however, that she died, my husband and I, we went downstairs to go and visit her. That actually was about my second time visiting her and therefore seeing her. And I looked at the nurse and like, something is wrong here. And they were like, what? I said, the oxygen levels aren't stabilizing. And they're like, I just checked her. I was like, but now it's not stabilizing. It's going from up to 100%, dropping down to the 80s, going up to in the 90s, dropping down to the 60s. Something is going on here. So they were making their rounds. I actually then went and managed to get the nurse to take a look again. They did, and they realized something was wrong. At that point in time, it means all parents, everybody had to leave the NICU, because that's one of the things. If there's an emergency, everybody goes out, and then that's sorted.
Okay.
That then occurred, and then sometime later it was like, okay, there's nothing more we can do, so therefore I was allowed to come back in. They have moved her then from in the main area over to a more secluded, one of the more secluded areas in the NICU, and my mom was there at the time, and we were actually able to give her up onto the Lord. So I was holding her. My husband was holding her. Mom was like, I want to hold my grandchild. So we actually gave her to Granny to hold for a bit. But before she died, Daddy wanted to be able to be the one to deliver her over to the Lord.
Wow.
And so he did, and I can still actually see it. I can actually still see it, him there standing up by the window and actually holding her up to the Lord. And so, yes, we all cried. We all shed our tears and that sort of stuff. Because even when she was alive, we were saying, okay, this part looks like this body and this part looks like that body, and she got these things. And she was very long, actually, for her age. So we went through all of that. We finally found out that eventually what was happening is that she started bleeding into her lungs again.
Okay.
By that stage, they weren't able to do anything. By the time, as I said, there was this up and down. She was just checked. All the vitals were fine. By the time I came, probably less than 5 minutes later, things had changed. So in terms of going through that, they did crying, they did tears. You stop, you ask yourself, what was the situation? In my family, however, so this is one of the things that, if anything, for persons to be able to understand, family history really is key. I knew of family members not being able to have children. In my situation, I had a child. I had what became, what the term is premature labor.
Okay.
I have other family members, however, they literally go through miscarriages at 6 weeks, and that's it. Right? For me, going through, part of what made that a joy, sounds weird? And it ties in again to what my motto is.
Yes.
All things work together for good. Because growing up from young, I was told that I will not be able to have children, that I was infertile. And so the fact that I was able to have a child disproves that.
Yes, but
So it's
also
like-
told by whom?
Doctors.
Wow.
Because going through my life, started puberty, as you should. Then at a particular age, that was it. Again, I was good. Beach 365. Don't have to worry about that. One last thing to go inside the grocery list. It could spend somewhere else. And so for me, it was the comfort then of others. I remember when that happened, and because of how active and so on I was in church, I had to be comforting a number of persons. And so I remember, again, because of the C-section, took a little longer and that sort of stuff for healing and so on. And I wrote out a thing of her name, Jordan, and crossing over my Jordan. And this being my crossing over. Again, with the fact that taking pleasure in the fact that I know I can have children.
That's right.
Wow.
And so even if I was not able to birth on my own, again, I'm a little strange, I knew there were others out there who needed parents. And so adopting children, that was my mindset. From
Okay.
young, being told that I am infertile, I will not be able to have children. So that was my mindset. So that was my comfort zone there in that situation. But then I went again. Changed doctors. No, I could have children. So next year, found that I was pregnant again. And so went through the process, 28 weeks. 30 weeks, however, I started getting these funny things again. Because I said, don't know when I'm actually in labor.
Yeah.
And then I was at work. The morning I went to the doctor. Then I went back into work. And I was at my desk. My two bosses were actually in an office where we could see one another. And I was telling them, something feeling funny. And they're like, you want to go to the doctor? I was like, no, I just came from the doctor. I got work to do. But if something, you not staying in here. So they end up taking me actually to the hospital. And so I went, trying to get again the information over. That's another horror. But anyway, and then realizing I was actually in labor. In checking, I was too far gone to put in a suture. And then what the situation is, you realize a suture would not have worked either anyhow. Went through that whole process, had a baby boy, beautiful baby boy, Christopher Aiden. One of the things I didn't tell you about the first one, original name Jordan Elizabeth, but then after she died, we actually added on Zoe, meaning life.
Wow.
Christopher Aiden actually is my husband's name turned around, but even the meaning for those are very powerful. Had him bawled down the entire place. And they were like, this is a 30-week-old child? Yes, bawled down the entire place. I was in there, I remember nurse was telling me, you can holler if you want to. I'm like, why? It's only labor. Ladies, don't beat me. Those who are going to be watching this later, don't beat me. Yes, lots of people don't like to hear this, but I don't have pain.
Good for you.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, no, I don't know when I'm in labor. And so went through that one, went upstairs, then I got a call. You need to come down to the NICU. I'm like, what happened now? Went downstairs, and then they were telling me, I realized for the last, can't remember length of time, they were trying to do as much as they can for him, but they realized they can't do anything else. Now I'm kind of weak, because this is like 9 hours later after giving birth. And so I was like trying to get hold of the wheelchair. No, it's fine. You're full of have wires and all of that. No, I barely would have seen him, because it would have allowed me to see him for a few moments before they took him off to clean him up and get him into the NICU and so on. And so it was a situation of going there. I was like, no, I want to see him. I am accustomed. I know what seeing a child with a whole set of wires in looks like. It's not going to scare me. I am fine. This is my background. I want to see my... If anything, I was more angry when he passed than sad. And I was upset with the fact that I was not there for my child when he passed. Yeah. And so I had to deal with that anger, and that anger was at the nurses and the doctors and so on in the NICU. We didn't manage to call down my husband, because this was like time now, so he would have been at home. Called him down, and then we were there able to see him. And all this time I was upset because I didn't get to see my child with all the wires and needles in and so on. I guess if anything,
And more importantly, alive.
even if it was the last few breaths, right? And so there too, my mother came down as well, and she was basically in all tears and all sorts of, Mommy, you'll be fine. Oh, you can say you'll be fine. It's my grandson, he's gone now. All the clothes I just buy, and this is the second time you're going through it. And I'm looking at my mother's like, who's supposed to be crying? Me or you? Okay, mommy, we'll be fine. We'll be good. We will get through this. I didn't know. Anyway, just like first, I spent for the healing process and that sort of stuff by my mom, and so we were there. So my husband got up. You good to go work? Yes. And I heard one time whispering, check on her, because I ain't too sure. Okay. Whispering outside the door. Did my tears, obviously, and that sort of stuff. I was like, okay. Then I know I definitely can have children. Right? During that time as well, I was still in the healing process, but then someone actually called. They have a friend, they just finished losing children, and the difference between them and me was that I was able to see mine. And so if anything like that, if you have that opportunity, I would say do it.
Okay.
I actually also went through burial for them.
Wow.
For my son, because he was, again, the length of time that he was in the hospital, they had to do an autopsy. I was fortunate at that point in time. I was actually able to get a thorough one done. When all the results came back, there was nothing wrong with him.
Wow.
Normally, they look at the lungs to see if they were developed. There's normally a hole in the heart that at a particular age then starts to close up and so on. All of that was closed. There was nothing wrong with him medically. And again, I was like, okay, all things work together for good. So what now is my purpose? I can allow this now to be a ministry tool for me. And I have been doing it. As I said, there was one time, there was a lady who was called, and it was still kind of weak. I said, yes, I will come down and I will speak to her. I was glad I had that opportunity. I felt sorry for her, as I said, because I was able to see them, to hold them, to have conversations with them. That, however, was not her situation. And even in miscarriages, that's one of the things I would say. If you have that opportunity, take it. You may not be in that frame of mind there and then, but take it, because as things settle down and later on, and you now have time to process things and so on, you'll be glad for that opportunity. Yeah.
So Avril, even having heard you talk about the differences between Jordan and Christopher,
Right,
you know,
yeah.
I wonder how you managed to process the trauma of it.
Yes.
Because I mean, you say that you gave birth to both
Yes.
of the children.
Yes.
You had a chance to name them, even
Yes.
offer up Jordan. So then,
Yeah.
what was your process like of trying to process that trauma?
It was a lot of questions. Why was it? Where am I? God, where did you see me? Where did you see myself and my husband at that point in time that you figured we are not ready for these children that you would have allowed to pass through me? That literally were the questions that I had. And if I am to have, what it would be the setting. With that, it was like, okay, you will have children. It will be a process. I was able to be given that answers. And I was like, okay, well, I'm a firm believer of whoever you bring then I'm supposed to share, I will share.
Okay.
And so that literally was it. My, if anything, my, should I say grieving? My grieving process, if anything, might have been possibly through others.
Okay.
Through family members. I then also had persons coming to me saying, I've had this. This was my situation. I know of a lady came to me and she said her sister actually lost 12 and still had none.
Wow.
I have closer to home as well. She lost 6. She now has a boy, but she would have lost 6. And as I said, and for me, the differences would have been I had the opportunity to actually hold, to actually see, to actually see in fruition what I was feeling on the inside.
Yeah.
The development, the butterflies, the stretching of the stomach, the remembering that you no longer can fit through small spaces because you have something. I had that opportunity. I give God thanks for that. Because I'm able to talk about it. Even now, I talk about it. People look at me and say, Avril, I want to cry, you're laughing. I'm like, okay, well, my father gave me two options when I was young. I could laugh or I could cry.
What made you and your husband keep trying? I mean, clearly you have a way of processing disappointment.
Correct.
With all things work together for good.
Yeah.
But what was that impetus that made you guys say, okay, we gone before, we know that Jordan and Christopher have gone to be with the Lord. What made you say, let's continue?
When we switched doctors, we actually switched to a doctor who my family member was with and understood then what the situation is. Because there are a number of things that could have been occurring. And so for me, sutures would not have worked. For her, sutures did not work. It meant then I went on medication. That medication is actually heparin and aspirin, which, by the way, is the same medication used for brain tumors. But anyway, always knew it. And so, funny time then that I found out I was pregnant, it was, you will go on this medication. I had options of 1 injection a day plus an aspirin, or 2 injections a day. Due to cost, I was 2 injections a day. Now to have the 2 little bundles of joy that I have. And I know it was hard on my husband. Yes, happy to have children, but hard on my husband. He does not like needles.
Oh.
And so for the first one, I was interchanging between my older sister coming and giving me an injection or a friend of mine giving me an injection. So depending upon who was available, the coordination was, okay, I'm coming this evening, okay. Because I can give myself the morning one, but I could not give it in the same location. So it was morning in front, evening behind, right?
Okay.
And just don't walk in the room, it looks weird. I'm bent over. Right? And so that became my life then. Once it was confirmed, the first one was like 3 months for 6 months. Injections twice a day. And if I forgot, I actually realized I forgot. I would get to work, I would go to the bathroom and say, shoot, I didn't take my injection. Call the person where I was working at that point in time. I need for you to drop me home. I didn't take mine. By that time, everybody knew that I needed to do what Avril doesn't normally do, which is stay still. Yeah, that was another story because it meant having a work husband. And my husband actually handed over, okay, these are your notes. She had this, she had this.
Wow.
She took the medication, she took, and then on the evening, it was handover again. Okay, so we did go out, but we did this and we did this, and I made sure she stayed there. I'm saying, I'm right here. And so the transition, if anything, was not, for me, the hardest part wasn't actually losing 2 children. It was the fact I literally had to slow all the way down now to be more careful. To be more careful that the people around me won't holler at me. Because in my head, I'm on medication. That's what it's supposed to do. And I actually realized it actually worked. Because as I said, the times I didn't take it, by the time I get to work, I could see that there's something wrong. I have to go and take it again. So medically, there is hope out there. Spiritually, I would tell persons, ask the questions. Because while for me, medication work, I know there's some persons who it won't. And that is based on what their medical situation is. Because I also have a close family grouping who will not be able to have children. They can get pregnant, but they have fibroids, and their fibroids grow during pregnancy.
Wow.
I actually had fibroids, but mine, and I have a sister, is like ours shrink
Okay.
during pregnancy. And so there are a number of situations. If I could calm people down during the pain, it would be to stop and ask the question.
Okay.
Yes.
And not only ask of yourself, but then dig into your family history. Because that was, again, one of my anger points. I stopped and I started asking my family about this. And then you hear all these stories, yeah, well, and this is why I did mine this way because I'm like, but this is something then that we ought to
share,
know.
yes.
Because we now have, okay, so my generation struggled, but we now have another generation now that we have to mind.
Yeah, that's right.
And so sharing really.
What I have to say, you're incredible. The way that you articulate yourself concerning this is quite profound.
Yes.
Even as we've talked about your journey of loss, we have another journey of loss we want to get into. So we're going to invite our second guest to join us, Karen. And as soon as she comes in, we can continue our discussion even further.
That's right.
Yeah.
This was
And we are back, and joining us for this second segment is Karen Bourne. Let me just give you a little information about Karen. Karen is a wife, mother of 3, and a proud grandmother of 2 adorable grandchildren, compliments of her first son who lives in the UK. And her teenage daughter, their last child, currently attends the Barbados Community College. Karen balances her professional career as a cosmetologist with her role of wife and mother. Welcome, Karen.
Thank you.
I'm going to let Chris take the first question on this one.
Okay, so Karen, as you know, we're having quite a discussion about loss. And we know that you have endured quite a felt loss, losing your son, Trey. But before we get into that, could you just tell us a bit about Trey's personality? What was he like, and what was your relationship with your son like?
Trey was very kind-hearted, very loving. He was very industrious. He was not academic in school, but he was good with his hands. He planned anything, it would grow. My relationship with Trey was very, very close. Reason being, he had sickle cell. He was diagnosed at 6 months. And we spent a lot of time in hospital together. I could remember, especially when he was like 18 months, he had a crisis. That is like, if you say you have asthma, you have an asthma attack, the sickler is a crisis. And he was in pediatric ICU. And I remember the doctor said there's nothing more they can do for him. Call all of the family. That's it. Thank God for prayer. Then there were another bad experience in that at 12 years old, he was bullied. Every day he was beaten at school in his head with rocks, sticks, pieces of metal, chairs. And he told no one for a whole year. He would come home and complain of headaches all the time. I'd say, Trey, did you drink enough water today? And that is because of the sickle cell. He would say, yes, Mom. But he had hemorrhaging on the brain. It caused a stroke at 12 years old.
12 years old, wow.
My word.
Yes. And that was my first time discovering Psalm 91. But within something like 27 minutes, he was out. He was not speaking slurred or anything. He was normal. What else can I say about Trey? He had a good relationship with everyone. He was very mannerly. No one ever come and tell me anything bad about Trey being in trouble or such. Like, he was a really, really sweet boy.
He certainly sounds that way, You mentioned that you guys were really, really close.
Yes.
So then, how old was Trey when he passed?
19 years old.
19 years young, wow. So knowing that he was so young and you know the journey that you've had with your son, what were you feeling like on the day when he passed away? Maybe you can share a little bit about the circumstances surrounding his passing as well.
Ooh, when Trey passed away, it was really, really hard. It was a very awful experience. I remember Trey coming home on the Monday night after work because he was a groom at the paddock. And he came, he said, "Mom, you good? You had a good day?" I said, "Yes, son. How about you?" He said, "Good." And like a couple minutes after, I sent my daughter Kiva to his room and said, "Go and tell Trey to come and get his food." In no time, Trey was asleep. So I did not get to spend time with him that evening. And the Tuesday morning, I did not see him before he leave because he would leave home the latest 5:30 in the morning. But I didn't get to see him that morning. But the Tuesday evening, around 6:15, I said, "Hey, Trey ain't get home." He said, "Yeah, how come?" Because he always on schedule with his time of getting home. Nothing would change. Oh, 7:30, I said, something ain't right. I just felt it inside of me. I started making calls. People said, "Well, Trey leave work since after 2 the afternoon." Then I heard that he leave work and he walk up on the beach. From the time they told me that, I knew Trey went into the water.
Wow.
I just knew my son. So we leave home. We drove all the way down Highway 7. We also passed the bus stops that he would have been at to come home. Being but he had sickle cell, he even went to accident emergency. He was not there. I said something really, really wrong. I went to the police station to report him missing. That was about 11:15 there, about the Tuesday night. So the police said, "Well, your son is missing." I said, "Well, he didn't come home." So I said, "It's not like him not to call and say, 'Well, Mom, can I?'" So they laughed at me, a 19-year-old boy asking Mommy permission. So I gave a statement. They asked me to go home for a picture. I went home for the picture. But funny enough, on our way home, we saw a little puppy like what he had. He had a dog named Lucky. And Lucky died the Friday before Trey passed. And this puppy was identical to Lucky. And this dog was like looking back all the time whilst we were driving. I said to my husband, "Andy, something is not right." I went and I got the picture, came back out, got in the car. As we were driving, this puppy was like in front of the car looking back at us. I said, something wrong. Something is definitely wrong. And he told me to be optimistic. Trey is okay. Trey never came home. But the Wednesday morning now, because I didn't really sleep strong, but I dozed off just in case. I smelled him really, really strong inside of the house. I went into the bedroom, no Trey. Made another phone call. It said that Trey leave work around 2 o'clock. I said, Trey went into that water. I leave home with 2 towels to keep him warm when we find him. But there was no Trey. I remember my husband, he went up to the side by the Hilton, and my friend Cheryl, she went to the side of the boatyard. And I sat on the bench by Caroline Bay. And I was discussing with this old lady. She said, "Sweetheart, what happened you there looking so sad?" I said, "I'm looking for my son. He didn't come home last night and I heard he was on this beach." She said, "Well, you don't need to worry because the Coast Guard and boat here." But I still feeling funny inside. And I saw Andy came back down. He said, "Kay, they found a body there floating beneath the reef." I said, "Is it Trey?" He said, and he went like that. I can't tell you what happened in that time, but when I caught myself, I was up. by pebbles. I got out the car and I was walking toward. I just saw his body in the white sheet. And his body was just laying there like if he was sleeping with his right foot up in his bed. And I said to the inspector at the time, "That is my son." He said, "No, that's not your son." I said, "That is my son. I want to see my son." But I had just came out of hospital the Thursday. I was in there for 2 weeks, having lupus and stuff. I was really ill. So they didn't want to keep me, they wanted to keep me level. I went into the conference room by Radisson, and I keep saying I want to see my son, but they're telling me no. Policeman brought in my son's bag. I said, "There you go. That's my son. I want to see my son." And eventually they took me out. And it still hurts. Like, they took me out. They eased off the sheet off his face. There it was, Trey laying. One eye closed, one eye open. I look at the heavens and I scream.
Jesus.
I said, "God, I want to see a resurrection power this morning." And I held on to my son. And I get this instant pain like I in labor. And I just went down and I had to push and push until this thing passed. And dealing with his death, it was a real struggle at first, because here he is. Sickle cell didn't take him. But he drowned. My question was, nobody see my son struggling? At a beach that is so popular, nobody saw my son. Was something else, like a horrible, horrible experience.
Can I ask you a question here, though? At any point in time during this process of finding him and up to even now, were you at any point really angry with God?
Yes, I was really angry. On that sad day, remember, I hear the Holy Spirit saying to me, "Through the waters, I'll be with you." Nothing more, nothing less, just that. And I was so upset in that Trey was a good child. People from all over the island came to our house and spoke highly of my son. My son knew big shots I didn't even know. Being he was a groom, so he get to know people from horse racing. But I was really, really angry because of what's going on now in the world. And my son. I said, "God, why did you take my son?"
And how are you now? Have you reconciled that anger where
Yes.
God is concerned?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. That's a good thing.
Okay, you talked about being angry, but what other emotions did you go through? What other battles did you have mentally after your son's death?
I couldn't sleep. I would find myself at night, like how all of us would be there at night watching the 7 o'clock news. I used to find myself looking through the door for him to open the gate to come home.
Yes.
Everything reminded me of Trey. Something up to now, something always reminded me of Trey. But emotionally speaking, I cried a lot. I still have my meltdowns, but not like before. But I cried a lot. There were some days I didn't even want to bed. I just live off of tea. I hardly ate anything. I didn't want to talk to nobody. I didn't want to see nobody. That's what I've been through. But my daughter, Kiva, she was always my rock. Andy, my husband, he would always cry and pray with me. But Kiva, she was my rock. She would come up in the bed and she would hug me. She'd say, Mommy, it's going to be okay. Even though she went into her silence, she would still be there for me. You know, and
That was actually,
God bless her.
That was actually my other question. How did his siblings handle the loss? How did your husband handle the loss? How did it affect your marriage, the loss of your son?
Well, with my son in the UK, he wanted to come back home. But I advised him not to because of my daughter. She went into this zone where she wasn't talking to no one. She was just there. With my marriage, it made my marriage stronger. In that even though I always knew all along that my husband really loved me, this showed me how much he really cared and loved, you know. And it affected him tremendously because he used to saw his body floating beneath the reef. So it's like, up to now, he still don't really talk about it much. Maybe start to talk, he was shut down. So I know it has affected him because he and Trina used to go fishing. They would be with the dogs together, and you know.
Wow. What would you say helped you to be strong after experiencing the loss of Trey?
Well, I would say, because it's like almost for a whole year, I did not read my Bible. I was coming to church, but you know, it's like
You were on remote.
Yeah.
It's a remote thing.
Yes.
It's out of
I wasn't
prayer.
reading my Bible. I was not praying. I was not worshiping.
And
I
that's
was just-
understandable
Yes.
because like that's why I asked if you were angry at God because
Yes.
sometimes I realize that people, let's say we, because all of us go through some sort of a loss. We go through different stages of loss, and I think in some cases we've allowed people to tell us that we can hold in things, to be strong and all that kind of stuff, but we don't allow ourselves the opportunity to grieve properly. And if you are angry at somebody, tell them that you're angry and get that thing out there so that you can start the healing process. So knowing that you said that you were angry at God, coming to church as per normal, but being angry with God, that was a passage that you had to go through because you had to reconcile that at the end of the day, God is still sovereign.
Yes, he is.
Still sovereign, you know? So, whoa.
But worship.
Yes. And that's the thing. I think the
Worship is what brought me out. One day I just got up, I had a shower, I combed my hair, put on YouTube and listened to music. And that brought me through. I had always loved to worship, but that is what brought me through out of it.
Is there one song maybe in particular that really resonated?
What a beautiful name it is.
Wow.
Oh, that's a song. What a song. Yes.
Replay, just
Yes.
Wow. Karen, thank you so much for sharing your story with us. This has been remarkable, you know. And I just want to say, you know, we're sorry you had to go through it, but we're thankful that you could sit here and share it with such grace, you know, with such grace. We know that your story will definitely, along with Avril's, affect many lives, even as you've affected us here in this space.
Yes. And the thing is too is that one of the things that we tend to forget that I know we ask, you know, God, why me? why would this happen to me?
Sure bet.
But then we have to come to a place where we recognize God's, how awesome He is, and the fact that He is, at the end of the day, still God.
Yeah.
If not you, then who?
Mhm.
You, I have fashioned you to be able to go through this process, whatever the process is,
Yeah.
because there's someone else that is going to go through this, and your testimony is going to be what is needed to help them through,
Yeah.
so that they will go through the waters and not go under
Mhm.
as well. So we
Yeah.
just thank you so very much
You're welcome.
for sharing with us today. Thank you so very much.
Thank you for having me as well.
Welcome back. We're coming on to our final segment in today's episode. And if you're just joining us, you're watching Woman to Woman. And today we've been having great conversation about different types of losses that we as women sometimes go through. So we've decided to finish off with a general conversation with both of our guests for today, Avril and Karen. So let's get into it. I wanted to hear from you both, ladies. You mentioned critical people in your families, but could you share a little bit more about your support system during your periods of loss and what it was like having to lean on them for that support? And we could start with you, Avril.
For me, it was friends, family, my husband, church family, church friends, work colleagues, the wubby. It was wide and diverse. For some of them, it was also me being the support for some of them. And so the groupings weren't only me getting the support to help build me, but it was me being involved with other persons to help support them. Because I was able to use this loss to branch off into other types of loss. Because at the essence of it, you go through the same emotions. And so that's how mine looked.
What about you, Karen?
For me, I had a great support system with my husband, my children, friends, church family as well. Tremendous support there. A lot of prayers, a lot of encouraging words I had from my church family. My drama family, can't forget them. They were wonderful to me. I had some friends and family that would cook for me, come over and clean, make sure I eat, make sure I bathe. Yeah, so. And me going through this now, as Avril said, I'm able to help others.
I wonder if I could ask you both, what perhaps was the most helpful thing that you heard as you were going through? Because, sometimes we, on the outside, we don't know what to say.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
maybe you could arm us with something. What was helpful, Avril?
Making sure I could eat. Not having to worry about that additional thing. Being allowed to be left alone and knowing just when to poke to move again. And it's not necessarily from someone who also went through a loss. I had a number of persons, as I said, who also, because with this loss, you're able to help. Loss is loss. Who were able to do that. Sometimes you'll be good and go away. Sometimes you sit down, let's just watch a movie. They know that you're not watching it, but they're just there. Sometimes silence is a lot. Just being there is a lot. It becomes then when your real friends that get you, understand you, will better know you. Are you the quiet person? Are you one who just needs to have the conversation to distract you from for a little bit? Or the one that just loves going for a walk? All right, come, let's just go for a drive, let's go for a walk. And so for different people, I think it might vary. right?
What about, you know, you always hear misery loves company. And this is a situation where loss is being experienced. And you want to be able, there are times where you just want to be by yourself. I don't want to talk to you, I don't want to do whatever. Yes, you have people come over who will come over and cook for you, who will clean for you, who will just sit there. So there's another presence there. But how did you deal with a situation where you've had other people who went through the same thing repeatedly, and you don't allow yourself to get into a place where you commiserate with the misery that the persons are feeling? That might sound like a harsh way of putting it,
I
but
got you.
It is real.
It is real.
Yeah.
I think I was fortunate to, like when my mother wanted to go there, my husband was in no.
Yeah.
So I had some of those blocks, so to speak. Once some persons understood that I was not faking it in terms of being well, I think then, okay, they got it. Don't, because there are some persons who, in their helpfulness, are thinking, well, let me take you there, because I don't think you did your crying yet. I don't think you did your mourning and groaning and whatever else is yet. So let me help you along, right? Everybody is different. And so if you know who your tribe is, where did I learn from? I think that's when it becomes key. Just like Jesus had the 12, but then he had his three.
And then he had his one.
For me, and I would have made mention of this, my husband became that one. I would have had the 3, but my husband became that one. I knew then what I needed when, how I needed it. If I needed the slap, if I needed the little pat on the little rub.
Or if you just needed a bath. I got you.
Correct. One of the things I tell people as well going through grief is that it doesn't stop overnight.
That's right.
No. No.
The shower is a very good friend.
Yeah, everything gets washed away.
Not only that, you could blame it on the soul.
So it gets me right.
Correct. You know, and so, because in those me times that I might want, I don't want you wondering if I'm crying, if the sympathy or whatever else and that sort. Sometimes I just want to cry on my own. Shower is a good place. I don't know where your place
Karen,
was.
yeah, I want to ask you to jump in here because you said something that was so important. You said there were people who may have perceived you to be faking it because maybe we think that grief should look a particular way.
Yeah.
So then, Karen, what about your support system? Did it look similar to Avril's, or did you have a completely different experience in terms of...
My experience was different. But what I could say, one person private messaged me on Messenger one time, because I would always put up a picture of my son and say something about my son, like in the first year. And this person said to me, "You gonna keep posting your child? You gonna keep crying all the time?"
Wow.
Well, the old man raised up and for 5 minutes, and they have it. I said, "God, you know my heart. Please forgive me now." I think it was very insensitive in that you can tell me how to grieve for my child.
Correct.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, correct. Yep.
Yes.
If you feel to bawl, bawl. If you feel to scream, scream. If you want to be quiet, be quiet. If you don't have nothing good to say,
Say nothing.
don't say nothing.
No.
Don't keep calling asking me, hold me. That's how I was during that time. And my friends and family understood and they respected that and they allow it, you know, for me to go through what I was going through. But for me, what worked for me a lot was I used to pass my days by sleeping because I was on medication that would put me to sleep so that I wouldn't have a high stress level to end back up in hospital. So my days used to just go by sleep. But you get up and it's still there, so
I have to deal with it.
So, if there was one lesson you learned throughout this whole experience, the first thing that comes in your mind that you want to share with our viewers, what would it be?
Trust God.
Mm.
His hands are unchanging. No matter what,
That's true.
always trust God.
Avril?
And I have also learned that you only know how tight the shoe is until you put it on.
That's right.
Ooh, that's a
So
word.
before I would see people praying, as human you would wonder, but to go
What's all
through
of that
it
about?
Yeah.
Yeah.
is a whole complete different scenario.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You, Avril? If there was one lesson you learned, what would it be?
Again, that God is true. All things do work together for good. Because even in that story, that was my holding point for a lot of things I've been in and been through life. And that was all I knew of that verse. And I was grateful for the fact that I didn't know the rest of the verse for a lot of the things that I went through in life. At the point when I would have had my loss, I knew the rest. So I had something else to even stand greater on. Because I knew who I was in Christ.
Yeah.
I knew who Christ was for me.
Wow.
And so it gave me even more hope. He has a better plan. He knows. I can't see it. He knows the end. I'm only in this part of the chapter of life.
That's right.
Yeah.
Good. So, ladies, how do you keep the memory of your children alive?
Mine might be a bit thing for some people. Because if you come by me, you see my children actually up, framed on a wall. My current children actually know
Who they are.
who they are.
Wow.
And they know their names.
Okay.
I love that.
There are some people who they come at me and say, Avril, that's strange. You good? I'm good. Are you good? Do you want me to take it down while you are here? So my oldest, well, my son that I have now, he will actually say he has an older brother and sister. My niece came the other day, now that she's much older, have greater understanding and so on. And she was like, tell me their story again. Because she would have been a very little child when they would have both been born and died. So she knows that there were two more, but she doesn't remember the story. And so even now I have the opportunity to do that, as well as give family history.
Yes.
Right? To understand, well, I would have gone through this. This is one of the things I need for you to have the back of your mind. Because I have two nieces.
Yes.
I don't know if it might affect the nephew. I don't know how it would go through, if maybe there might be that effect. If they then too might have girl children or themselves, I don't know. But I make sure to share it there as well with them. And that's how we do it. Every time their birthdays come around, we say, well, they would have been this age at this point in time. Periodically, my son knows so much. My son will go, how old Jordan would be now, and how old Christopher Aiden would be now. So it is a free understanding thing that we do all the time. As I said, the pictures are there so much so that we don't have pictures of my two who are currently alive. Nice big frames are the ones who have gone, but yeah, I don't think it's an anomaly. It's a talking point.
Yes.
You know, you have people, you have phases in this, and you talk about a conversational piece. There are conversational
There you
pieces.
go. Karen?
For me, I look at Trey's pictures. I would listen to his voice notes. Like when I really miss him, I would listen to his voice. Because he would call during the day and say, Mom, how you doing? Your day going good? That kind of thing. So I still have those voice notes. He was cremated, so the urn is there. So sometimes we say, Trey, you good? You know, that's how we keep going.
So what kind of advice, ladies, would you give to a mother who is maybe now or recently going through the loss of a child?
Go through it.
Each day is a process.
Yes.
Each day your healing would come. Just allow yourself to go through. Don't let nobody rush you and tell you how long to grieve for your child. Just
Correct.
go through the process.
That's true.
Yeah. It does not matter the length of time in which you would have had them, because it's still a part of you that you would have lost.
Yes.
Go through it.
Yeah. Talk as much as you want to if you can. Even if you look at the wall and you talk, you just talk. Get it out.
Yep.
Don't keep it in.
Thank you so much for coming, sharing your stories, the lessons, and really encouraging me. I'm really encouraged by both of you guys' strength. And I just want to say that we're letting you know that we've gifted you with a package from one of our sponsors, Frozen Minis. This is your surprise, yay! And to our audience at home, stay tuned to how you as well can win a giveaway from one of our sponsors. Today, we're going to thank Passion Art Creations for the artwork you see here on the wall, Shane Holford and Fresh Productions for the videography. We also want to thank Healing Power of Touch Skincare and Clinic and Spa, Frozen Minis, Nail ExQuisite Nail Salon for our guests and viewers giveaway.
Alright, so everyone, it has been a pleasure indeed to have such a thought-provoking discussion about grief and loss. Making these things sound normal, you know, and acknowledging them as authentic experiences. That's right. So thanks again, Avril. Thanks again, Karen. And thank you, viewers, for being faithful and tuning in. And I just want to encourage you, do you have a journey of loss that you want to talk about? Start the conversation in the chat. Leave your comments down below. Let us know how this episode has affected you. And share this episode with your friends, with your family, with other women who need to know that it's perfectly okay to go through loss in your own way. So thanks again, and until next time, have a good day.
Bye.